Hi everyone, welcome to the Patreon community for Carissa Browning Designs. I'm so glad you're here. I'm your host, Carissa. I design patterns for hand knitters and crocheters. I also teach classes on various knitting and crochet techniques. I teach both in person and virtually for festivals, retreats, guilds, local yarn shops. I come from a background in math with a particular fondness for geometry and how shapes fit together. I think that is pretty evident in some of my designs as well. I also enjoy combining different knitting and crochet techniques to see what sorts of fabrics I can come up with. Little history about my fiber arts background. It all started in 2004 when my brother and sister-in-law announced they were pregnant with my first nephew, and I had this sudden urge to make all the baby things. Within about a year, probably, I was designing my own creations, and I would write up the instructions and share them for free on my blog. This was in the early days of the internet, maybe not its infancy, but its adolescence, perhaps. So it was mostly simple accessories at first, hats and scarves, baby things. A lot of it was nerdy in nature, as am I. So for example, my nephew's first Halloween, I made him an R2-D2 costume. I bought a onesie and I painted R2-D2's panels on it, and then I knitted a hat, like a little beanie style hat that looked like R2-D2's dome, and it was so adorable. So I wrote up these patterns and I would share them for free on my blog. A few years later, with the advent of Ravelry, I was able to start selling my patterns on that website. The Ravelry marketplace created a very nice, easy platform for people like me to start selling patterns to the knitting and crochet community at large. So I'm very thankful for that website. Let's see, over the years, I've had a few patterns go a little bit viral. So you may have heard of my my Wonder Woman shawl that came out right after the first movie with Gal Gadot. I designed a shawl with the Wonder Woman logo. It was a knitted shawl, and as soon as I posted it on Instagram, it blew up. And within a few days, I had so many crocheters in my comments asking for a crocheted version. So I said, yeah, I know how to crochet. I can do that. I can adapt this pattern. So I created a crochet version of the same pattern. And I think that that has become sort of part of my shtick, is creating a knit version and a crochet version of the same design. There are some of my designs that are only knitted and some of my designs that are only crocheted, but you will find a lot of twin patterns or sister patterns that there's a knit version and a crochet version of the same basic design. And I am always open, if you find a design that is only in one craft and you only do the other craft, I am more than welcome, or I am more than willing to look into that and see if we can adapt it for the other craft. Let's see, another pattern of mine that kind of hit it big was the Yip Yips. These were characters from Sesame Street. If you grew up in say the 80s and 90s watching Sesame Street, and there were those fuzzy little aliens that just said yip, 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 yip over and over again. I originally created these as Christmas stockings for my brother's family, and each family member got a different colored Yip Yip stocking. But they can also be used to store, all sorts of things, kids' toys. You can make a small one and put stitch markers in it in your craft room, whatever you like. So that was a fun pattern that is also available in both a knitted version and a crocheted version. And then you may have also seen my Descent cowl. So in 2019, I believe it was, I knitted a cowl that was inspired by Ruth Bader Ginsburg and her dissent collar that she would wear whenever she dissented from a Supreme Court decision. So I designed a knit pattern for a cowl that was inspired by her dissent collar, and I called it the Dissent Cowl. And a portion of the proceeds of that pattern do go to the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, with whom Ruth Bader Ginsburg had close ties. About a year later, I developed a crochet version of that pattern as well. And sadly, within about a month of my releasing the crocheted version, Justice Ginsburg passed away. This was in September of 2020, and I put out an announcement saying that not only would I contribute a portion of the proceeds from the sale of those patterns to the ACLU, but from the day she passed away to Election Day in November, I would donate 100% of the proceeds. Following that announcement, things got real fast. Within about a day of that announcement, we had raised over $10,000 for the ACLU just off of those two little $5 knitting and crochet patterns. Within a few days, we had reached 20,000, and then we hit 30,000, and then 40,000. I believe to date, we are up to about $43,000 raised from two little knitting and crochet patterns. And all of that money has gone to the ACLU to defend Americans' rights. So that touches me in such an amazing way. It was the best kind of overwhelming. I do have another charitable pattern as well, the Pride and Progress cowls that I designed in 2024 in collaboration with Leading Men Fiber Arts. These cowls were designed, inspired by the Progress flag, as you can probably tell. They are also one of those patterns where I played with geometry. So there's a knit version and a crochet version. Each one is an infinity cowl, so it's a circular tube, but they are created by joining 4 squares in a certain way to create a tube, which is a little interesting and maybe a little mind-bending for some people, but I really had fun with that design. And a portion of the proceeds of those sales goes to the Trevor Project. Other unusual construction designs that I've created, we've got the This-A-Way and That-A-Way shawls. This-A-Way is a knitted shawl, That-A-Way is crocheted, but they have a very similar look and a similar construction. Each starts at one end with at a point, and it has increases toward the center of the shawl. And then at the middle point, you reserve half of the stitches, and you continue with decreases down to the opposite point. When you've reached that opposite point, then you come back to those reserved stitches in the middle, and you create a mitered square going downward to the third point, the middle point of the triangle. So it is a triangular shawl, but it's not your typical top-down triangle. So that's a pretty good example of me playing with geometry to create something that is familiar but not at the same time. Let's see. I also like to combine different stitch patterns and see what I can do with that. So one of my most popular patterns is called the Breaking Plaid cowl. This cowl combines double knitting and double stranded garter stitch to create a plaid fabric. And since both double knitting and garter stitch are reversible, this plaid fabric is also reversible, so you get the same plaid fabric on the back. Not to mention, it's double knitting and double stranding, so it's double thick and extra squishy. So that is my Breaking Plaid cowl. I've also combined very basic double knitting where it's just one solid color on one side and the other color on the other side. I've combined that with very basic brioche, 2-color brioche, where it's just 2x2 ribbing, but the knit stitches on one side are one color and the knit stitches on the other side are the other color. So I've combined simple double knitting with simple 2-color brioche into a hat that I call Niefling, as well as a matching cowl called Pibbling. And because double knitting and 2-color brioche are reversible fabrics, these hats and cowls are also reversible. So you can wear them with the light side out and the light side brim of the hat, or you can fold up the brim so you have a dark color brim, or you can flip the whole thing inside out and wear it with the dark color brioche showing and the dark color brim, or fold up the brim so it's light color. So it's basically like getting 4 hats in one pattern. So that's a prime example of combining different stitch patterns to create interesting fabrics. Over the years, my designs have been published in a number of different magazines and books, from Knitty, the free magazine, knitty.com, Pom Pom Quarterly. I've had a cowl published there several years ago. I've also had some nerdy designs featured in books by Tanis Gray. I had several patterns in her Star Wars Knitting the Galaxy book, Fellowship of the Knits, a Lord of the Rings, an unofficial Lord of the Rings knitting book. And the Gilmore Girls just came out this past year, the Gilmore Girls knitting book. I've also had a couple of socks published in New Directions in Sock Knitting by Ann Budd. And then, of course, I have a whole library of self-published patterns on my website and on Ravelry as well. Let's see. So what can you expect from this Patreon community? Well, honestly, I want this to be a two-way street. I want to hear from you, and I want to know what you want as far as membership benefits. And we'll go from there. We'll build this community together. So as of right now, I do have a Discord server set up for a community chat. So that is going to be one of the membership benefits in Patreon. Any paid membership tier will be able to access the Discord server, and we'll be able to chat amongst ourselves. I will also offer discount codes, of course, on my patterns. I am contemplating tiers that will include early access to patterns, so patrons would be able to get the patterns before the general public would, perhaps. We may do bigger discounts during public sales. So if I have, a birthday or anniversary sale or something, the general public would get this much percentage off, and maybe patrons would get a slightly larger amount off. Let's see, behind the scenes videos, like I know everybody loves to see a little bit about the process and how these designs go from in my head to on my needles to in your patterns. So I would love to share some more information about that process. And yeah, just I would love to hear from you and know what you would like to see, what you would like to get out of this Patreon community. So there is a poll up in my Patreon right now. You can join for the basic tier right now, or even if you just join for free, you should have access to that poll and you can vote and let me know what you want to get back from this community. So yeah, thank you for sitting here with me and watching this video and learning about me and my background. And I hope that sounds interesting to you to get to know me better and to allow me to get to know you better as well. So thank you again for staying here with me and watching this. Thank you for being here and being on my Patreon community. And I hope to get to know you more in the future. Bye.